Welcome to the Fralin Spotlight Talks for YouTube. Before we begin, I encourage you to use these videos interactively. When you are prompted to observe, pause the video and look carefully. When the educator asks a question, feel free to pause the video again and discuss your observations and ideas, making sure to address what you see that makes you say that. Enjoy!
I'd like us to begin by taking a long, slow look at this work of art by Robert Reed. Reed made this work entitled Scanch Branch in 2000. I invite you to allow your eyes to travel all over the collage, taking note of what stands out to you. What do you first notice when looking at this image? What areas do you gravitate toward when observing this work? What colors, shapes, and textures do you notice? I notice Reed's repeated circles and spheres, connected by multicolored pathways. I also notice his textured and patterned background, and its gradation from rusty red at the top to cool greens across the bottom. Let's take a few more moments for observation. After looking more closely, what aspects of this collage do you notice that you might have missed upon first glance? Feel free to pause at any time. You're welcome to write down any of your thoughts, or if participating with friends, classmates, or family, you can share your observations with each other. Reed's work, although formally abstract, is often autobiographical in nature, incorporating visual elements that are representative of his interests and experiences. This kind of autobiographical abstraction can perhaps be found most often in Reed's attention to color. A Charlottesville native, Reed's work makes frequent references to his childhood experiences and Virginian roots. For example, in this work, he uses a surface wash of red oxide to evoke the red of Virginia's clay soil. Reed often drew inspiration from the sights and sounds of his childhood, growing up in the Charlottesville Black community. Reed lived on 10.5 Street Northwest, played at Washington Park, attended First Baptist Church on West Main Street, and attended Charlottesville's segregated Black schools. Reed said his artistic process involved, quote, organizing fragments, paths, cultural and universal signs and symbols, remembered childhood images, and places into a pictorial stew, unquote. Reed often incorporated his school colors as a kind of repeated visual language in his work, sourcing the colors from each of the 4 institutions he attended in his early life in many of his paintings and collages. Black and red are used in reference to Charlottesville's Jefferson School, green and gold to represent Burley High School, as well as orange and blue to reference Morgan State College in Baltimore, and white and blue to evoke his ties to Yale University, where Reed earned his MFA in painting and later taught drawing and painting as a Yale faculty member for 45 years, from 1969 until his recent passing in 2014. How does learning this information about Reed's artistic practice and interest in autobiography inform your understanding of this work? Let's return to our observation of the collage. Reed has placed a variety of circles, spheres, lines, and other shapes atop his textured and patterned background, and I notice that he has stapled these shapes into place. What do the staples bring to the work? How would it be different if Reed had glued his shapes down instead? What about this image do you find most compelling? What sort of feeling or mood does this work elicit in you? Identify one word that comes to mind when looking at this collage. I like thinking about this work as some kind of landscape. If you were to find yourself inside this work, what might it feel like to explore? What sensations might you experience in this imagined space? What sounds might you hear? We can learn a lot about this work by listening to what Reed himself had to say about his art and artistic practice. I'll read you a few quotes that I found informative. Quote, "I often say, 'Why do you paint?' And for me, it's something that has to do with a need. I can't imagine not doing it," end quote. Quote, "The work is a way for me to document experiences, thoughts, objects, places, and people, both in the past and in the future," end quote. Quote, "You can approach a piece with a certain intent, but it's improvisation. That's the joy of it, and that's also the craziness of it," end quote. Quote, "I think there's one word that is important to me in terms of the work and what happens and what drives me, and that is the notion of gravity," end quote. We'll spend our final few moments together thinking about Reed's Scanch Branch in a broader context. Does this image remind you of anything you've seen before? If you could ask the artist any questions about this work, what would you ask? Thank you so much for taking the time to look at Robert Reed's Scanch Branch with me.
We hope you've enjoyed this Writer's Eye Spotlight Talk. Please reach out to the Education Department with any questions or feedback. Our email is museumoutreach@virginia.edu.